Hello and welcome back to the course. Today, we would like to introduce to you the concept of content and language integrated learning, which will be referred to as CULE from now on. By the end of this mini lecture, you are expected to be able to understand the concept of CULE, describe its characteristics, and be informed about some previous research of CULE. Firstly, let's have a look at the definition. I would like you to watch two short videos in which the presenter introduced this concept. Now let's have a look at the first video.
Created using Powtoon.
Now we are turning to the second video.
In this introduction, I will review what CLIL is and why so many schools are using this design for their bilingual education programs. CLIL is more of an overall design than a detailed method. It is a system that is content-driven and language is integrated into the learning. CLIL helps teachers to ensure that their units and lesson plans are balanced and include sufficient opportunities for the application of knowledge and the development of communication skills. Why is there such a push for these types of skills? Well, one reason could be that in 2000, PISA, which is a division of the OECD, started a study that tested 15-year-olds around the world and their abilities to apply knowledge. The results have shocked many countries. Many countries all over the world discovered that their youth could not apply knowledge and were lacking in critical thinking skills, creative thinking skills, and problem-solving skills. This meant that changes had to be made and schools had to come to terms with the fact that memorizing information does not automatically mean that students can use the information. This meant that students needed to be more highly active and participative in the learning process. This also meant that students needed to work in a more student-centered environment and improve critical and creative thinking abilities. This meant that communication skills also had to improve as students would be required to do more hands-on work.
As you can see, widely advertised as a dual-focused approach that gives equal attention to language and content. CLIL could be described as an educational approach, where curricular content is taught through the medium of a foreign language, typically to some students participating in some form of mainstream education at the primary, secondary, or tertiary level. Although the word L, language in CLIL, is meant to stand for any language, in reality, the prevalence of English as CLIL medium is overwhelming. Therefore, most of the time in this lecture, when referring to CLIL, I mean content and English integrated learning. There are some characteristics of CLIL. Firstly, it is about using a foreign language or a lingua franca, not a second language. That is, the language of instruction is one that students will mainly encounter in the classroom rather than in the wider society they live in. Secondly, the dominant CLIL language is English. This reflects the fact that a command of English as an additional language is increasingly regarded as the key literacy feature worldwide. CLIL also implies that teachers will normally be non-native speakers of the target language. They are not, in most cases, foreign language experts, but instead content experts. Next, CLIL lessons are usually timetable as content lessons such as biology, music, geography, and the target language normally continues to be taught in other foreign language lessons. Additionally, in CLIL programs, typically less than 50% of the curriculum is taught in the target language. And lastly, CLIL is usually implemented once learners have already acquired literacy skills in their first language, which is more often at the secondary rather than primary level. We are now turning to the outcome of some studies on CLIL. In this lecture, I will only mention some among many different findings about the language learning outcomes of CLIL. The majority of previous studies have shown that CLIL students achieve a higher foreign language test scores than mainstream students. This is not surprising due to the fact that these students continue their regular foreign language program at the same time. Moreover, CLIL students have larger, receptive, and productive lexicon. They can use more words from lower frequency bands, have a wider stylistic range, and use vocabulary more appropriately. In terms of writing skills, the students have a wider range of lexical and morphosyntactic resources, which they develop in more elaborate and more complex structures. However, it should be noted that differences are not identified at beyond sentence level, such as cohesion and coherence. Regarding oral production, CLIL students tend to be ahead on all dimensions of their respective speaking constructs with greater fluency and speaking confidence. I will now turn to the question of content learning. Research findings on content learning outcomes are altogether less conclusive than those on language learning outcomes. On the positive side, some studies concur with results emerging from Canadian immersion context, which show immersion students outperforming peer control. CLIL students work more persistently on tasks and show a higher tolerance of frustration, thus acquiring a higher degree of procedural competence in the subject. On the other hand, there have been a number of reports on its negative impact. One shared observation seems to be reduced active students' participation in the classroom, which may lead to less learning. This is understandable because when English is used as a medium to learn a content subject, some students encounter problems of expressing scientific concepts in English and therefore cannot participate actively. Positioned between these opposing views, other studies report neither a positive nor a negative effect of CLIL regarding content learning. A qualitative longitudinal study of 6 4th to 6th grade classes combining oral subject knowledge interviews with classroom observation conducted by Badester and Berry in Switzerland showed that there is no differences between CLIL and mainstream students. So, what about the future direction for CLIL? as suggested by Danton Poffa. In terms of theoretical content, language and curricular content should be conceptualized as one process. It won't be the task of the research community to build the necessary bridges to general learning theories based on ideas of discursiveness and performativity. As regards to empirical implication, it is necessary to define subject-specific language use in terms of lexicon and genre for various content areas. This should lead to clarifying what academic language skills are generally and what are specifically by subject. It will be vital to keep in mind that realization, that conceptualization, and findings based on the global lingua franca, English as a clear medium, need to be carefully examined for their transferability to other languages. So far, we have been working through some features and literature review of CLIL. Now, could you please self-assess whether you have been able to define CLIL in your own words, describe its characteristics, report some findings from previous research on CLIL, and predict the future of CLIL? If your answers to each question above is yes, congratulations, you have achieved your lesson goals. If no, could you please come back to reading 1 again for more detail or discuss your problems with peers in the same cohort or with the course coordinators? Thank you.